All right, I don't think I've ever seen one of these videos before. This is Bellular News. Okay. EA, this is exactly why people hate you.
The games industry is now messed up to a point where you can be a developer on the best-selling game of the year and still find that your job isn't safe. And for you and me who play the video games, that's kind of bad news, because the people who lose their jobs walk out of the door with all the knowledge they've accrued. Have you ever wondered why you might play a game and think, wow, did the developer not make all of those mistakes? Last version of the game, why are we making them again? Yeah, institutional knowledge walks out the door. Now, what we're talking about today is Battlefield. Your buy-in with that game helped to dethrone Call of Duty at launch, but of course, that doesn't really matter to EA's leadership anymore. They want more. And what happens next, I think, tells you everything you need to know about how the people running these studios think about the people who make their games. So if it's all about the money, then what about the money? Battlefield 6 boosted EA's financials incredibly. Year on year, they were up 38% in net bookings, so from 2.2 billion to just over 3 for the 3 months after the game launched. That was good, and it was on top of even more good news because EA Sports FC did fairly well, and even Apex Legends had some double-digit growth. Just fairly rare for that game now. But it's BF6 that led the way as the best-selling game of 2025. That was a first for the series, they got new records for player engagement, and EA's execs also just locked down an extravagant deal with the
Well, because Battlefield 6 was literally a war game. They just focused on what used to make Call of Duty enjoyable, where it was a war game, and then Call of Duty just started focusing on its multiplayer aspect. It has too many colorful skins that don't make any kind of sense, and now you have these futuristic weapons in a war zone, and then yeah, it's just like Battlefield 6 was like a return to form.
Public investment
a return to roots.
So they've got the payouts incoming, they've got their 5-year gamble with Battlefield actually paying off. Surely they would have been thrilled, right? Obviously not. There is just one problem, and that is the net revenue in this quarter last year was 1.88 billion. That was Dragon Age, NHL 25, and some Sims expansions along with live service revenue. That means that Battlefield's success only boosted them to $1.9 billion. Very sad. I'm sure we all feel awful for them. Now that's
yeah, because they destroyed other games, other industries in order to actually get to that point. But Battlefield 6 kind of made them a net even, I guess.
EA making incredible amounts of money, but it's not an incredible enough amount of money, and the rate isn't fast enough. So how do you solve that? How do you very quickly make yourself be more profitable? I think we all have an idea. According to IGN sources, staff have been laid off.
Yeah, you have to fire the old guard and have to hire in nobodies that know nothing who get paid literally the bare minimum, because the other people have worked their way up to the top. But the thing is, these people end up leaving the companies who know everything, who know the code, know the animation, know the rigging, know everything to actually build a game. And then they go off and make their own thing. They create their own little studio, and that's how you get like Expedition 33. That's how you end up getting these games that people actually want to play, because it's actually focused on, well, the people who actually created the old guard. Instead of people coming in and training their replacements, no, they get rid of everyone old and just hire in a whole new crop of people who know nothing.
Across all of the Battlefield studios. That's DICE, Criterion, Ripple Effect, and Motive. EA's calling it a realignment, and they say no studio closures are planned, but the layoffs are widespread amongst teams and amongst disciplines, which is a great recipe for making players happy in the long term, which a few Battlefield players maybe aren't right now. But there is some extra context to this story. An Ars Technica report from last year flagged the scope of EA's ambitions, like literally just how huge they were. The budget had ballooned past $400 million because of development delays, and EA leadership at one point were reportedly targeting a 100 million player number across the game's lifespan. That's about 70 million more than Battlefield 1, BF1 being the franchise's like mass market high point. So, you know, kinda tough. Now, those player targets may have been reachable through Gauntlet and RedSec, which were their free-to-play modes, and you can maybe see how they thought. What if Core Battlefield gives us the best Core Battlefield numbers we've ever got, better than BF1? And then what if RedSec gets us Call of Duty Warzone numbers? Then we'll have 100 million. Yippee! That's probably the deluded wishful thinking that went on. Of course, as we know, both RedSec and Gauntlet were rushed out pretty much immediately after launch as a sort of onboarding ramp, but they just ended up creating friction between paying players and free players who just wanted different things from their Battlefield experience. Then quality issues with the December update slowed Season 2, and with that, new income from the new Battle Pass would have been frozen. And there is, of course, the passing of Vince Zampella. That has likely led to some internal reorganization on top of all of that, and given how important he was to Battlefield Studios, you could maybe see him as being somewhat of an internal advocate and someone powerful enough to maybe shield Battlefield from some of the worst decisions that EA could make. That is certainly what we believe, generally speaking, went on with Respawn, which is where he of course was previously. With the game then, the live service was not delivering at the pace that EA wanted, and in fairness, it wasn't really delivering at the pace that many players wanted. But here's the thing, right? Battlefield is not the only live service game where Electronic Arts just cut their staff, and the pattern between the two we're going to talk about tells you something really important. It actually may not be about the games at all. In February, the developer Full Circle announced that their free-to-play live service version of Skate had reached tens of millions of players. Amazing news, but that they would also be, quote, transforming as a studio by reshaping Full Circle to better support Skate's long-term future, which of course means layoffs, which are likely happening because the studio costs more to run than it's bringing in from passes and cosmetics. Maybe this could tell us that propping up our whole industry on passes and cosmetics is just not a sustainable thing over the long term. I don't know about you, but I'm happy to pay for content. Anyway, with Skate, the cracks were already showing. You see, the studio revealed that an updated version of the tutorial island would be coming to the game, but it would be behind a premium subscription paywall and then an in-game currency paywall. And that does break a promise made during Skate's announcement back in 2022 that they would have, quote, no map areas locked behind paywalls. Lovely. That's a promise that was there in their FAQ until one day, quietly, it was no longer there. I wonder how that happened. Now, their response is just that, quote, sometimes plans have to change. That's part of the deal when you're building in public. Okay, I do get that. I suppose they needed more income, so they need...
People don't need fancy graphics. They need a good story and optimized games, but developers depend on upscaling technology, but not optimizing it. When the game fails, they fire employees. Exactly. A lot of it is just like, again, I could be perfectly happy if I had a Morrowind-like game, same graphics, just you have it be fun. Because it's a game. The gameplay should be top, and then story should be second. That's it. Graphics are at the very, very bottom. Very, very bottom, because guess what? It's actually not important. The graphics aren't as important as actually having something fun to play. Look at all the people who absolutely loved Silksong. Absolutely love it. For me, those Metroidvania type of incredibly difficult things to play are not for me. I mean, heck, Elden Ring, I'd be awful in. Absolutely awful in. But it's just like there are those games out there that are meant for people that are, but they're just fun. They just need to be fun. And as long as it's fun, you've got an audience. You've got an audience. But the problem is, it's just like, again, upscaling. Always wanting upscaling. Every single time.
Needed to break a few promises to get that income. But the thing is, you can also make more money by spending less money, hence the layoffs. So Full Circle and Battlefield Studios likely are suffering from the same problem. They cost a lot of money to run. EA invested heavily in setting these up. Full Circle was built from the ground up, and Battlefield had a similar plan with Ridgeline Games, but of course they shut down Ridgeline Games. There's the whole debacle with the campaign of Battlefield, and overall, they took 4 studios, they gave 3 of them no other projects, and they just put all of them in Battlefield. That's extremely expensive. So, fewer staff, lower operating cost, higher margin for your live service, fairly simple logic, fairly simple plan. Seems that's what they're doing. But here's what's interesting. Even if the live service income was disappointing, and I'm ready to believe that it was, EA's leadership have an entirely different reason right now to be thinking about looking efficient, and it has nothing to do with the actual video games. Think about it this way. We know that Battlefield 2042 was a comparative failure for EA, so much so that they spent years and hundreds of millions rebuilding their development pipeline for BF6. While we do know that staff attrition was rather high at the company, do you know what also didn't happen whenever 2042 was just floundering about, I guess, like a fish out of water? Big staff layoffs. Those did not happen. Despite all of the financial damage done with BF 2042, they did not do layoff waves. And of course, 2042 was almost certainly making a shitload less money than Battlefield 6. So if a 2042-like situation doesn't inspire layoffs, and that's a game that multiple studios were working on as well, then maybe this is less about the game's income and more about Electronic Arts itself. And that's where, according to IGN sources, we have an interesting thing to talk about. EA is not framing these layoffs as part of their preparations for the Saudi Public Investment Fund acquisition. And it's worth remembering that they've told the Securities and Exchange Commission in their filings that there would be no, quote, immediate changes to the workforce as a result of that acquisition. So with all those statements made, they wouldn't necessarily just say out loud why they're laying people off. But what we can see is that EA have spent...
They're going under. They're going under. They've done enough bad things to begin with. They've made a lot of failing games. I mean, Battlefield 6 was profitable, enjoyable. People had fun playing it, but it doesn't, what is it? One giant bucket pulling water out of a sinking ship with a ton of holes isn't gonna stop the ship from sinking. It'll alleviate it for a time, but it's still gonna sink. Even though that giant bucket can get a lot of water out very quickly, it's still taking on water. And that's basically EA. It had a little bit longer life because Battlefield 6 was able to sustain it for a little longer, but now they need to do layoffs, they need to cut, and then they're gonna sell to Tencent.
Here's cutting staff. Between 2022 and 2026,
like everyone else,
they laid off about 2,000 people. Now, partially that's a post-pandemic correction, but it also made EA look lean, and that is exactly what you want to look like when you're trying to court a buyer. Because one thing that always happens around an acquisition is, of course, layoffs. Management always needs to make departments that are about to be acquired look as profitable and efficient as possible. And firing a bunch of developers who aren't directly contributing to profit, well, that is just good business. It will look disciplined. Of course, never mind that those studios have still got to operate those live service games after they have lost these key personnel. And perhaps if you're wondering, didn't it feel like games maybe just were a bit more stable or got more content like at times back in the day? Is all this live service stuff actually good for us? If you're thinking about that, well, it's a good thing to think about. And maybe some of the conditions under which these games are made, maybe some of these financial structures have something to do with it. Because it really seems like the Western industry has optimized completely around squeezing live services. Not exactly great, and there's certainly a good few counterexamples from, I don't know, Japan. But the point is that the balance sheets will look good when the new bosses arrive, and that raises a bit of a question. What does any of this actually mean for the people who made Battlefield the best-selling game of the year? Battlefield 6's success lasted about 1 quarter. Skate was also about the same. The devs delivered that success, and they were then just getting underway with their live service stuff. Of course, in the hopes of meeting EA's targets for what those games could deliver over time. And maybe they've missed those targets. You know, the 100 million player one that's been much talked about as one example. But the people being fired did not set those targets. They just tried to do their job as best as they could. EA set the targets, and EA leadership have now decided on layoffs. There's no accountability for the people.
That's also the difficult thing. It's just like there are those people who are actually just trying to make a fun game, and then there are the people in corporate who are trying to meet an actual goal. An actual goal, when it's like you have to be honest. How many people are going to play it? How are you going to outreach those people? How much are you going to spend on advertising? Or are you going to have it word of mouth? How many influencers or streamers are you going to be paying to play the game? Because that's actually how games are promoted now. Streamers are actually paid to play the game to show it to as many people as possible, because streamers normally have massive audiences. Well, big streamers normally have massive audiences, of course, because they're big streamers. But that's the thing. It's just like that's how it works. How much do you need to pay them to play that game? Or are you going to be able to have such a fun game that people can actually play it? I mean, like Highguard, they were actually paying people to play the game, and the people who were paid to play the game couldn't even find lobbies to enter. And when they did enter a lobby, people would quit their teams. It was completely a complete failure. Complete failure. But yeah, that's the thing. It's just like people at the top always have a different perspective than people who are just trying to make a fun game.
Who set those targets. And I want you to think about something. In a world where, say, Battlefield 6 is purely just Battlefield for the sake of Battlefield, trying to be the best of what a Battlefield game could be. So focused on 64-player, the maps that Battlefield's known for, and not a whole bunch of other random side shit. Maybe you only put loads of resources into RedSec because you think you need to hit 100 million target over a bunch of years for your bosses. Maybe that's why a bunch of fractured bullshit happened within the development process that certainly appears to have slowed down their ability to just make maps and content. I don't know exactly, but those big strategic targets that come from the top have a big impact on how the games are actually made. But the sad thing with these types of targets is, even if you meet your targets, well, management can just decide that, oh, you hit the target. Clearly, we should have set a higher target. Of course, missed the target and the devs didn't do a good enough job, but either way, the outcome is the same, because the sales don't matter, the targets don't matter, success doesn't matter. The only thing that really matters is the balance sheet, and how all of these things feed into the goddamn balance sheet. And after setting up all these expensive studios, EA simply just doesn't want them to be as expensive as they have been, now that their launch is done. And there's nothing that the staff could have done to change any of that. They could have hit 100 million players, and it would have just shown EA's leadership that, well, with fewer people, the margins could be even better. So I'd say none of this is long-term thinking. I think it is just corporate leadership rejecting the last number that they saw and trying to make the next balance sheet look better, because that is, funnily enough, their job. And of course now, the remaining staff have got to try and deliver on what players want, with fewer people, less experience.
The same thing happens in movies too.
Profit margin.
It's like you have producers who literally are just trying to make as much money as possible, and then you have the creators who are just trying to create their vision. Yet the producers are wanting, no, more spectacle, more means more money, that kind of thing. When a creator, a true creator of something, wants to have longevity in it. They want to create something that can stand the test of time, that will go on for years and years and years, and you can go back and rewatch it. That's the thing. It's like that's what game creators, what true artists want to do. Create something that can be enjoyed forever. Like people could go back to the old Sonic games, the old Mario games, the old Street Fighter games, and still have a great time because you know what you're going to get with those games. You really do. And they're still fun to play. They're still fun to play. But nowadays it's just like you can only enjoy it as long as it's popular. That's really it. Because as soon as it gets unpopular, well, there's no more lobbies, there's no more fun gameplay, there's no more none of that. None of that.
So if we maybe feel like we're not getting as much content, but we're also being asked for more money, gee, I wonder why. But that is just the reality of the games industry in current year. You can literally make a year's best-selling game, and the only thing it'll buy you is the privilege of watching your colleagues get fired so the balance sheet looks a little bit better for the corporation's next owner. Thanks, EA. You know, one of the reasons why people left Respawn and moved to Wildlight to do Highguard is that they actually felt like, even though Apex was a really, really big success, it didn't really, like, give them many benefits. It just didn't seem like, oh, we had a really big win. Why are we not really seeing the benefits of this really big win? That's one of the reasons why they decided to move and to leave EA. Maybe tells you something. Though obviously their story has not ended well, and if you
their Highguard was a complete mess up. The whole thing was just a complete cluster, completely ruined itself. But yeah, I mean, you have the whole thing where you have these creators wanting to create something, and then you have the people at the top who just want to make money, and in their heads how to make money. I was just like, oh well, this game over here did this, so we need to implement that. Or this movie over here did this, so we need to implement that. We need to copy it. Like the whole, what was it that did it first? I think it was like the Spider-Man No Way Home. Was that it? It made so much money that we started to get more of that nonsense in the films. More of that nonsense, just like the first Avengers, where they had the team up for the first time. People absolutely loved it. Then everyone else tried to do the exact same thing. It wasn't any good. But at the same time, it's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I gotta say, you gotta just enjoy things. You gotta enjoy things, and you gotta actually find something that you can enjoy. It's because are there bad things that are actually fun? Are there bad movies that are enjoyable to watch? Absolutely. Absolutely. There are bad movies that are enjoyable to watch. Are there fun games that are terrible that are fun to play? Well, when you play with friends too, yeah. When it's something that's terribly done, there's absolutely something fun there. But the thing is, it's a niche. It's a niche, and sometimes people create those things that are meant to be niches, but the thing is, there might be someone over above them who literally handles the pay and is like, no, we need this because of this, it's all about money. And even though money is good, I think it's better for people to enjoy what they do and make something they believe in than for someone to do something for money. I mean, look at people who stream and put out a fake performance just because they want the money. In the end, I prefer watching people who are just honestly themselves, don't change they're just themselves, because you feel like you can get to know that person rather than those people who are completely fake, just trying to build an audience because they're fake. That's just how I see it. I prefer the people who do something because they genuinely believe in it. Whether I agree with it wholeheartedly, like what they are trying to make, no. But I feel like I can see who they are through what they create, through how they talk, through that kind of thing. That kind of thing. Like the whole Ikaki series that came out. Would I say it was the best thing ever? No, but I understand more of who he was as a creator and as a fan of like Marvel films by what he created. And you can tell he put in a lot of passion to it. Could it have been done differently? Absolutely. Would it have been done differently if I was doing it? Absolutely. Could I do it? No. No, I don't have the audience. I don't have the money. I don't have the vision for that kind of thing. Well, I have vision for certain things, but not for those kind of things. But that's the thing. It's just like it's always people at the top. And I prefer people when they make something with their heart. When they make something with their heart.
You guys see the video? So bad.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Wait, wait like that.